Futurama comic issue 19. The beginning of the issue is off-putting because it seems to be a flash forward where Fry is getting nominated for an award for saving the world. And then it cuts back in time to him flying his mere biplane all the way up to space to spaceship of the enemy alien species. Even Sonic 2 is more realistic because Sonic actually had to leave the biplane and go use his spaceship up in space. So Fry ends up put in a POW camp. It's boring to read about people talking about their planned escape instead of just seeing it get carried out, so I'm not very interested in reading it. Fry wasn't listening either. It cuts ahead to late at night, and eventually I see the alien king of Omicron turn on his bedroom light. It turns out that we were merely told about their plan, but the artist was too lazy to show it. So the next day, Fry ends up captured, and the alien king gets told by the doctor that stupidity is contagious, which doesn't make any sense. So that's a deus ex machina to justify him letting Fry leave. That's as satisfying as not knowing how he left at all. Earth was placed under quarantine, and the invaders promised to never bother Earth again. We cut to Fry talking to nobody because the awards ended hours ago. It's trying to make up for the underwhelming deus ex machina. I wouldn't imagine it happened after the ending of the last issue by being a joke. They bothered Earth again anyways, so I guess they eventually realized that stupidity wasn't contagious. Fry leans on a statue while saying he misses his friends, and miraculously frees Leela from it when he breaks it open. You know, she could have just been teleported to Fry by the god, or teleported to dinosaur times. Leela's somehow expected to have money for the trip across the river Styx in the flashback, even though nobody would ever have the money. And then after he threatens to take her to the transit authority, she kicks him into the river and gets him killed. Couldn't anybody who was brave enough to do that? So how did he live this long? A lot of people would be desperate. She gets threatened with Cerberus, but doesn't think to kick that while she's at it. She asks him where the Greek gods came from, and gets told that Greece was once the cradle of democracy, but negative ads, partisan politics, and lobby groups made a mockery of their system. So they decided to try a theocracy. I guess because it's been so long that they didn't realize that dictatorship, go figure, would suck. But for that, they needed gods to worship, so they built them. Why didn't they see it coming that the gods would become corrupted by power? So, an idiot ball. That's why their civilization became like that. Because they didn't program them to be always pure good and uncorruptible. I assumed the gods were just magical aliens ruling them. Leela says that if they're dead, why does she have a pulse and why is she breathing? She came up with a plan to escape by getting the two other people with her to bother Cerberus. Then she insults it, and for no reason Cerberus gets destroyed. Huh? I don't get it. This needed to be shown in motion. Why would it die from being mad? They all get out of the cave, and Leela gets kidnapped and flirted with. She cleverly tells him to close his eyes before a kiss first, and smacks him. And luckily he was too cheap to get a flying horse to pull his carriage, so he kidnapped a centaur and attached jets to his hooves. And that centaur happily agrees to take Leela to Mount Olympus. Wait, wouldn't she immediately pass out from the air being too thin if she was sent to a mountain immediately? I guess there's futuristic air bubbles around the place to permanently solve that problem. But why? It seems like only the god robots are there. I guess because it's the future, it's a lot cheaper to have the air not be so thin on the mountains permanently than it is to have people have to take their oxygen up there. The god robots are passed out drunk from the festivals, and Leela reveals that she took robotics rewiring class in 4th grade, and somehow she was able to successfully reprogram the robots to do nothing but compliment each other and not want to bother Greece anymore, even though she hasn't rewired robots since 4th grade. And 4th grade is really early to be learning that. It's cool that she can, and it was kind of foreshadowed because she can make a microwave too, but that was stupid too. Since when can she do either of that? Amy should have been here. It's a deus ex machina. And once again, it leaves you with a hollow feeling as if you didn't even read how she escaped. Hermes wasn't reprogrammed though, so he gets suspicious at being complimented and figures out Leela's brought this on herself for blasphemy. and tries to wipe out humanity with an ice cap melting flood. So he's one of the many people to make the mistake of thinking that the ice caps melting would create enough water to flood all of the planet, when really all it would do is raise the sea levels enough that Florida would get flooded, and everywhere that's on its level. Leela rides on Bucky when he's flying towards the missile. His jets can turn the missile, but there won't be time to get away. Bucky sends her into the ocean to save her, and she was frozen until they used the block of ice she was in to carve that sculpture Fry broke. It doesn't make any sense. The writer needed to explain that a god turned her into that sculpture, and Fry accidentally broke the spell. Fry finding a magic stone that breaks the spell would make more sense. And it's bad when the reader's assumption makes more sense. At least explain that Hermes caught up with her from naturally falling behind the people trying to foil his plan and turned her into that ice. Then Bender reunites with them, so what's his Deus Ex Machina? It's not Sonic, I expect better writing than this. Since Bender's a robot, he didn't burn, which is why he escaped the situation just fine. And he was functionally invincible in the show, but you wouldn't expect that from a different robot. I'd still have preferred to see him escape. He says Samantha didn't want anything to do with him, so he spent time in Europe, took a pottery class, and led a robot revolt and took over the world in what the humans called the Industrial Revolution. Then he naturally got bored of administration, so he sold humanity the world back for a mere $100 and a case of beer. He'd ask for more than that. He also learned to shine Shu. Their time machine pieces vibrate. I didn't see them get them. One of the pieces can also lead them to the other piece, so good thing Farnsworth thought to program that into it. So they find the professor's skeleton in the museum with the final piece. They go back in time, and conveniently, when Fry gets eaten by a dinosaur, he's unharmed because he forgot to chew, somehow. And this is also how Farnsworth and Hermes and Leela survive. So Farnsworth puts the time machine back together. Having Hubert point out that there's tons of different ways the plot makes no sense doesn't make it okay that it doesn't make sense. Farnsworth used the time machine to stop himself from inventing the time machine in the first place. I wish I saw that instead of Leela saying it. At first I thought Hubert said this makes no sense instead of that makes no sense, because there are tons of plot holes before this panel that he could have been lampshading. Instead he's just saying this makes no sense, when I'm willing to accept that just fine. This story was underwhelming with how easily Fry and Leela escaped their situations, to the point where it doesn't make nearly as much of a lasting impact on me as the last two stories. Fry flew a plane to a spaceship and got captured and put in a camp, and escaped because of a Deus Ex Machina where Lur thinks Fry's stupidity is contagious and leaves Earth. And Leela escaped the Cave of Hades by getting people to help her get Cerberus mad enough that he inexplicably destroyed himself. And she fell into the ocean of the North Pole, and somehow got turned into ice immediately instead of dying. It should have just been explained that Zeus froze her in time, and put her in the sculpture that Fry broke, and breaking it would free her from the spell, like I assumed. And of course Bender was immune to fire, so he should have known that and not been intimidated of it in the first place. And eventually everyone got led to the museum with Farnsworth's skeleton by one of their timepieces, because apparently that's a thing it can do for them. And nobody gets killed when a dinosaur eats them because it doesn't chew. So it didn't make any sense that everything ended up back to normal.